We're back with matchup number 2 today, and it's a little bit interesting because it'll be the debut for the live games of West Garfield Park. It's the first time we get to see them as an audience. Cookies, I guess this is the best opportunity to introduce them because no one knows anything about them yet.
You don't know anything about Biologic? You don't know anything about
the audience. Pretend, not me, the audience, Cookies. God, come on.
This is great. Bio, guys, the storyline for this game. Okay, I don't know anything about West Garfield Park. I haven't even seen their games because none of it's been streamed. You haven't seen the VODs yet. Even us, okay? So I'm just going to tell you what I know here from the statistics. Bio's dropping numbers, okay? Slippery's playing his former team. Snake, if you don't know who Snake is, everybody's like hyping Dexter, and Forceful's about to hype Kilo. He was already talking about that. He couldn't contain himself. But Snake's one of the best players in CL as well, talent-wise. Valor has been all over the place role-wise, but when he's on his flexible frag and needs to get the LMG, he's nasty. And Rice, previously of Aqualix, he is the new addition to West Garfield Park as well. This team has something to prove. Bio versus NVK, the year 1, year 0 dinosaur matchup. You've got Slippery playing his former team. It's going to be beautiful.
Ooh.
It's going to be biblical.
Mm.
Okay, get it. You don't have to stare at me. Back up.
I love it. I love it.
Stand back.
I love it. I love it. Okay,
Right,
so
thank you.
West Garfield Park coming into the day in 8th. They're going to be taking on the second place one shot, but Forceful, they're only in second because they didn't play 3 games, which Rent Free did get to do.
Absolutely. I mean, this roster has been absolutely lights out this offseason. We talked about last week about how they made a gamble with the roster moves. You know, they dropped Slippery, they dropped Subarctic, and now we're getting that Slippery matchup. Oh, man, I'm loving this already. But they picked up Prod and Razor from the old X-Set roster, and now they've just come into their own. This gamble looks like it is paid off. I mean, it's only week 1, right? We got to put that caveat on there. There's still a lot of Siege to play left in this stage, but they've come in and looked absolutely dominant. I specifically wanted to highlight Kilo. I mean, we'll talk about him a little bit more when I get into my critical points, but he's been absolutely lights out. He's been a star player both games that they played. He's been putting up big numbers. I think he had a 0.149 rating in the first game and a 0.52 or 1.52 rating in the second game. So it's just been absolutely massive, giving him that really high average that you're seeing right now. And, you know, when your flex player / shot caller / IGL / veteran on your team is able to put these numbers up, there's a reason why that team is doing so successful.
So obviously, this is going to be a super tough matchup, and I'll take your toss right away because you haven't given me attitude yet today, Tanner.
I would never.
Cookies, super tough matchup, and we'll make sure not to leave you hanging too many times. I'm sorry for the awkward moment. I couldn't resist, though. I needed to see you sweat it out a bit, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Let's get critical, though. Let's talk about West Garfield Park. Okay, is this roster, are they ready for the big time, the prime time? And I would say maybe not, because, you know, Slippery, as you said, Forceful, there's been some hot and coldness with this roster. Slippery went 3-8 off stream. Okay. And the thing is with I almost called him Shrimpery or something. Slippery he's exceptionally hot and cold. He's literally the definition of just, I'd call him streaky at this point. He should just rebrand because he can absolutely take over games. We've seen him do that for one shot in the past. We've also seen him disappear for massive swaths of rounds. And obviously when you're talking big time matchups, prime time, whatever, Slippery can't just, you know, I think he just kind of goes AFK and like tends to his kid or something, but that cannot happen in the middle of this match because this is a big time match for West Garfield Park. This is where they turn the corner and potentially establish themselves as an elite roster. And of course, map pool wise, Force, complex maps like Skyscraper and Theme should be a complex guy and Bio's best friend, right?
Absolutely. If you're a good IGL and you know how to adapt, you know how to like read the room and read the plays that are in front of you, maps that are a little bit more difficult for other teams to IGL, such as the new ones like Skyscraper, like you mentioned, like that should be Bio's bread and butter. But we haven't really seen them go to that map just yet. And we're kind of looking for that team to kind of, you know, expand that map pool and maybe, you know, pull a surprise map here on one shot because they're definitely going to need it. And I kind of want to get into my critical points here. Like when Kilo and Prod are just absolutely being so dominant, you know, and they're going to every game putting up these massive numbers, it's teams like West Garfield that are going to, like, you know, maybe be able to put the monkey wrench in there by giving them something that they're not used to seeing. West Garfield had a very, I won't say predictable, but it was a very shallow map pool in stage 1. So hopefully this stage, they're going to be able to like surprise teams. And if you're going to pull it out, these are the teams you need to pull it out against. My only real concern from one shot, because like if they've looked like I can't praise them enough. I think in terms of not showing a flaw, this is probably the most perfect roster that we saw in the first weekend. The only big issue I was seeing with them is on their entry differential on defense. Now, granted, in this meta, it's really difficult to
Mhm.
put up entry numbers on defense. We just saw it in the last game versus Aerial Rise and LSR. LSR was able to get 6-0 on their entry differential. So if they could shore up some of those defensive rounds and make sure that they're setting themselves up for the right foot, I don't think there's like a really good chance at all for West Garfield to kind of pull away from this, just with the
Now,
way they've been playing.
Cookies, we know that the sample size is small across the board, but especially so for West Garfield Park. One shot's kind of going in blind here, I'd say. This might be advantageous as far as a map ban goes for West Garfield Park because they've only played Clubhouse, which how much can you take away from that, especially when there's no VOD review to do on it. So I like what they've got going into the map, Vito.
Yeah. First of all, you punch in the air right now.
By
Seeing
punching
the
there,
seeing that theme park go instantly for West Garfield. We talk about how they should maybe have used it in their favor.
mm.
No, it's just insta banned, and I don't know if you guys remember. One shot actually like lost that. It was to Nocturnes, to Poison, Mr. P. That was last stage, but they're just insta banning. Not even going to attempt to go to more complex maps. Bank was a struggle map for West Garfield last stage as well. And I don't want to elaborate on it too much. It was ugly. But you're seeing honestly kind of some bread and butter maps from One Shot going away. Villa.
Oh man, don't go to Clubhouse again. If this is the third time West Garfield is going to Clubhouse, I'm not looking. This doesn't look too good. One shot. Okay, there you go. There's the one shot ban and Kafe. Ooh, this is interesting because both of these teams uh, have shown that they're decent on this map. They put in a lot of work on the outside. One shot, particularly looked really good in stage one on this map. So, and I think this is the first time we're getting Kafe this stage. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I believe you're right. I
Just on
don't think that
stream,
we've
yeah.
seen it yet.
It's just one of those maps that's like it's really difficult to play in this meta. There's not a lot of places for defenders to sit. You're going to be looking for a lot of roams. But one thing I will bring up: this is probably a zombie's most impactful map. She can absolutely change the entire battlefield of this map. I'm really curious about operator bans, and if a zombie gets left up, we're looking at a very interesting and different Kafe than we're typically used to in Challenger League.
Speaking of with the zombie, let's also talk about Tanner. Do we see any potential of something like Sens coming into play? We have nothing really to go on because we have no idea. But I think of a lot of like big, long hallways and different things like that where those sight lines can be cut off. Maybe we do see some Sens plays.
I think there's a very high chance you do. I mean, we watched last game. What was it One Shot versus LG? Prod was bringing out the Sens, and they were doing some really interesting Sens lineups, going through drone holes to block off big lines of sight. And like you mentioned, this is a map that has those deep lines of sight. I'm thinking kitchen to bakery. I'm thinking cocktail to cigar. Like, there's a lot of really long lines of sights that can be cut off by just simply rolling. I don't even know what you call it, like a light wall. You roll the light wall out, and then you can get those easy plants to get down and maybe create some space, isolate some crossfires, and have a little bit more of a dynamic entry coming out on the side of attack.
And CJ, what do you predict going into? Ooh, okay. Okay.
I think what we all predict. Apparently, yeah, all One Shot, because as we've talked about, One Shot seems like the most complete team out of all the contending ones. They have perfect balance of veteransmanship. You've got even the guys that maybe aren't like pro league veterans, or maybe they should have been, but they never got there. Someone like a Kilo or a Swalen, incredibly solid for the roster, and you have the veteran backing. It's kind of hard to go against them, especially when West Garfield Park, they're still kind of youthful. Snake's still kind of working out the immaturity kinks. He's still kind of learning some things. You've got Bio as really the only one you can really rely on going back to any tangible amount of time. So it's kind of hard to pick West Garfield Park in that regard. Even though I'm sure they're going to put up a fight, I think it's very fair to.
What are your thoughts though? Consider this: their loss, their one match, their loss was against Rent Free, which at the time last week, not knowing too much, might not have seemed like such a big deal, but a 7-5 loss to the team that's looking phenomenal right now. Maybe West Garfield Park has something going for them.
You know what? Again, we couldn't see the VOD, but I want you to know that Bio main Finka in that game. He did not get an entry kill, and he had the most kills. Those are all losing things. I love Bio. Smart guy. Great guy. Those are not winning qualities.
I just want to add one thing to that game, too. Like, that was a game where at one point, West Garfield Park was ahead. They were sitting there getting close to match point. That was a comeback victory for Rent Free. So hopefully today, even if West Garfield Park does go up early, I want to see some of that killer instinct to kind of, put one shot down instead of just thinking, okay, we're ahead, let's rest on our laurels and allow a team like one shot to come back, because this is a roster that 100% has the capability to make these comeback victories.
Have we, Tanner, seen any changes lately in Cafe? Maybe even with the meta changes going into today's match or this season more specifically, that have any sites changed around on Cafe? Have we seen any changes in? Obviously, I believe it's kind of attacker favorite at the time. It's a little, or at the moment, it's a little difficult for defense. Have any sites kind of come to the forefront where they might have been a bit on the back end, or vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now that it's been in the map pool for so long, a lot of teams are starting to experiment with the fourth site of mining
Mhm.
and dining. It's a site that's typically, especially in Challenger League, teams have tried to avoid. There's only a couple teams that come to mind that used to play it. So I'm expecting that maybe that map, now that's been in the pool for a while,
Mhm.
is something we're playing a little bit more frequently. And especially in an attacker sided map, having the ability to go to all four sites is definitely going to help you on your defensive half. So I look towards, teams maybe they're going to go play mining and try and be a little bit more dynamic. But right now, it's not a fun map to play defensively.
Let's talk a bit before we get into it, CJ, because we are talking about West Garfield Park, but more specifically, they lost. Who's it here? I'm looking at it. They lost Twist and they lost Barring, picking up Rice and Slippery. What were your thoughts overall on the team? Do you think where do they make improvements? Maybe does it hurt them at all with those roster changes?
I think it's just honestly just looking at their roles, it just seems very weird. It's just hard for me
Mhm.
to like. Obviously, you've got Snake playing, the fragging roles or whatever, but it's always been a thing. Like Bios locking the fragging ops and doing whatever, and I just don't really feel like that's the best usage of the guys they have on the team. Someone like a Rice, I've seen him in the past in T3 and whatnot, playing more of like a flex, like a sledge, something like that, and they've got him on Thermite. That type of thing is really where I question if the roster actually got better in that regard, or if
Mhm.
it's just like I don't know. That's not something I'm too high on, and it's always been my main criticism of West Garfield. And maybe I mean they've also shown that they're willing to like completely just flip roles week to week. Like that was the main
Mhm.
story last stage, even with like I talked about earlier with Valor. Valor ended up switching roles around, and they ended up playing really well towards the latter half of the stage. So maybe we see something totally different from what I'm looking at here, or they just come out and
Mhm.
look the same, and one shot takes this game.
Well, what is a little bit scary, Tanner, is now you compare if we are going to talk about roster changes. One Shot was already a bit better of a team last stage, I believe. Their roster changes, CJ's over here sitting on the fence with their roster changes, and One Shots are arguably, you can't deny that their roster got a lot better. So that kind of makes me feel a little iffy for West Garfield Park just on a straight matchup outside of score lines or what either team has achieved so far this stage.
I mean, like I said early on, it's too early to tell. But the one thing the roster change from one shot demonstrates to me is a lot more consistency. We saw with what Cookies was saying with Slippery. He's the definition of a streaky player. He's either very hot or he's
Mhm.
very cold. And a team like One Shot, they need a player to be stepping up all the time. And now with the introduction of Prod, it seems like they're getting to that point where they're consistently putting up these numbers. And like they won 7-2 and 7-4 last weekend. Like that's nothing to scoff at. Those weren't like very
Yeah.
close games. Those are dominant wins. And they're sitting pretty at 6 points. They got a really high round differential. And I think a lot of that is attributed to, bringing a little bit more stability to this roster, which I believe the roster moves did when they brought in Razor, who's a very solid entry player. And then
Mhm.
they brought in Prod, who's a very solid flex slash support player who can shot call. And Razor can shot call. I don't think there's anybody on that team that can't. So now what you're seeing is like that consistency, that dominance, that coordination pieces, and they're able to pull out round wins that they're not even supposed to win. Like we're seeing with Swaling clutching the 1v2 there to beat out LG. This roster just like looks head like top to bottom a
Mhm.
very very solid roster.
It's super impressive, and I can't wait to watch them. It'll be a few more minutes away. We're gonna flip to the casters right now because they probably want to talk about a bit about this match, get you guys primed up. So we're finally gonna see Cafe the stage. Take it away, boys. Oh, I apologize. We're gonna go to a quick break instead. The players just aren't ready, and then we'll be back in a few minutes.
But mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
extended break, we do finally have a matchup to show you. Unfortunately, somehow, John, another player's power went out, but this time it came back on before we even had to get into the game. And as I said before, this is actually like it's happened twice in the NAL and once in CL. I will have casted the first Kafe of the league.
Seems a pretty notable thing to mention. Definitely an
is.
exciting one at that. Honestly,
affects the
Kafe is
game.
very exciting to watch because how little it's played, especially in CL. So it's kind of a guilty pleasure at this point. But unfortunately, the bans, they don't seem to really go alongside with that. Things seem pretty typical at this point. Thatcher, Flores, all very valuable operators to have, especially put in the right hands. So at least the ban phase seems pretty normal, but I'm wondering in terms of when we actually get into the matchup, how the operator selection is going to look like. Again, I know CJ talked earlier about what roles are being an option, especially for West Garfield Park. I definitely think it's interesting that Bio is rocking the Finca, especially since when we saw that change eventually happen where he went back to his roots on hard support, it seemed like their team overall did significantly better. So I'm wondering if we're either going to see him still trying to fit in that role of a fragging position, or if we'll see him back on hard support. I guess only time will tell.
As Tanner noted on the desk, this is one of the better maps for Azami when we do see Kafe in play between the two teams, and West Garfield Park, maybe as a result, or just for personal preference, will take Azami off the board. Valk also following as well. So that does leave Omai up, which we did not see much of in the previous game, because while he was banned, he can be a very useful operator on sites like Bar and Cocktail if teams want to bring it, but instead, we'll see Razor and Swalen just rocking the Jaeger and the Aruni. So no extra projectile denial for these two teams, and Pixel will be a little bit more difficult of a position to hold as a result. But at the same time, they do also have NVK on the Warden, which with that MPX and that 1.5 can be a very powerful weapon to deal with anybody on those cigar repels.
If noticed, we might not see the Glaz pick in selection by Bio. That's almost a hard counter, and yep, right on the money. Bio will switch in for the Sledge, which isn't going to be that great at, performing vertical, the old-fashioned way with a sledgehammer, but at least getting those hatches open normally on that roof and maybe rotating later on, or in general just going in and utilizing those grenades is going to go a really long way for West Garfield altogether. And for the most part, they've got a decent amount, just two in the pocket, both slippery on the Finca, and then of course, like I mentioned earlier, Bio rocking the Sledge. And besides that, they've got pretty basic utility burn with those two sets of flashes, and also Snake on the soft breach, bringing out Ash as well. Could be pretty useful, again, especially if you want to go for a more bottom to top kind of clear instead of fully committing to that top floor roof play.
There are quite a few bulletproof cameras on the defense for those Ash charges to find. Only one deployable shield, though, of course. There are also some Banshees the attack has to worry about because of one shot bringing all three of those operators, the primary and the second, or all four technically, if you include the other bulletproof I was talking about. So a lot of explosives the attack will need to destroy some of this utility, but they might just get a pick for free before they even have to get to that point. Razor currently playing very aggressively inside of Christmas, all the way on stage. He'll swing, try to take a gunfight, fire some shots, but Slippery is repelled very far down beneath that window. So Prod might just take it upon himself to succeed where Razor failed. He's prepped an impact grenade, but neither will go for the play, unfortunately. Razor will back off, so will Prod, and just take refuge behind their respective positions.
And if we had Prod go for that run out, he might have been greeted by a Claymore. We saw Snake proc one early on, but it seems he was able to destroy it and reap the rewards of that, shutting down Bio very early in the round and losing out on one of your many valuable sets of those grenades. Across the map, though, things seem pretty normal besides losing out on that first opening duel. You've got the ticket wall opened up, you've got people on those cigar repels, and you have also the Ash player of Snake actually inside of shop as well. So decent map control, and now that the shield is gone, it's going to be much riskier, or much more risky for Razor to actually play inside a bathroom and hold off the aggression this next minute 20.
BP destroyed as well, so any bit of intel you had to influence Razor's decision-making or to aid any of his gunfights, also now gone, so you'll probably have to retreat down Whitehall fairly soon as the timer starts creeping down to 1 minute remaining. Slippery has started to fill the void left by the Jaeger, maybe even more so as the time goes on. He's moved up to the bathroom wall, and Razor's even lost a little bit of HP as he's now moved all the way over to Cocktail, but not much beyond that. The attack's still waiting to start pushing on in. Final EE1D goes out. The Banshee will reveal Slippery's position, and his push and stomp up Whitehall will be stopped for the time being. He'll sit back on Palace for the moment.
40 seconds left, still the line on the window repel, and I think at this point they assume there's at least someone over near the white stairs. Rager catches one off screen, going in on a hop out. It seems to be a pretty notable play at that too. Rice gets finished off with a shotgun, leaving only Slippery alive, and he's in the middle of pallets, position well known, and NVK will snipe him down with the MPX. A flawless round to start things out here for West Garfield Park.
Able to just play their positions fairly easily, not have to worry too much. One shot, just wait for West Garfield Park to start pushing in, and they very effectively dispatch with everything that goes their way. First kill achieved by Prod, just running out from Bakery Door, catches Bio completely off guard. So once West Garfield Park get the control they at least start to need for the early to mid round, they're making okay time. But being down a set of nades makes clearing out Razor's position a little bit more difficult, and once he retreats all the way back to white, plays very conservatively, they have to make up for lost ground, and they get caught completely off guard by Razor hopping out of a window. Getting one kill for West Garfield Park, and then at that point, you're going into the remainder of your execute in a 3v5. One shot can just play the angles, play the positions they were going to anyway, and make use of the man advantage, the 2 body threshold separating them from you. And at that point, they're probably going to win unless somebody from West Garfield Park goes huge or somebody from one shot makes a critical error. That did not happen. Now we move to Kitchen, where don't see an Azami, of course, because she's banned, but we do see Sens, that other operator the desk mentioned, that we might see on Kafe because of how many long angles you can cut off. Biologic will switch to them. We'll see what those ROUs have to offer.
Interesting to see where these projectors get blown out from, perhaps. Seems like there is enough hard breach to actually go in around and get that bakery wall opened up. Maybe even go around in through freezer perhaps as well. No direct vertical, but you do have those Excara charges to maybe open up some hatches, although those were already opened up by one shot during the prep phase here. And like you had mentioned, these projectors can really cut off a huge portion of sight lines that can be held in by the defense, but there does seem to be enough stall potential, not only with those nitros, of course, in the pocket of Kilo and NVK, but also you have those toxic smokes and the Yokais as well. So despite the fact we have a very plant-orientated lineup here by West Garfield, it seems like one shot they have enough utility to most definitely slow down West Garfield, put in the right positions.
West Garfield might feel a lot easier as well if they're able to get an early kill on Soylent, take down that player on the bottom of White Stairs to make the freezer drop if they want to go that way. A lot easier later on. The focus seems to be over on the bakery side right now. Razor certainly takes a lot of damage from that position as Valor has already entered small bake and put the Jaeger down to below 50 HP. Rice also getting some hard breaching done on that prep wall. Still some progress to be made on bakery itself. It's electrified, so you probably have to go above, maybe use some utility. West Garfield Park, the longer they take, the more problematic it seems. 4 drones now remaining and still over half the round to go. And one player almost loses their head to Prod.
Yep, trying to be closed, but still no fruit to bear for West Garfield. Razor still up above over in this middle floor, even as backup by Kilo. If this is not taken care of properly by anyone, which might end up being Bios, I believe he's all the way in the top floor, that could allow for the vertical to sing in through for one shot and potentially deny this default push, leading in through both prep and regular bait.
With no vertical control makes this a little bit more difficult. Biologic is trying to compensate for that, vaulting in through the skylight on the top floor, but he's going in blind right now. Only 2 drones remaining for West Garfield, so any intel he gets will have to be gathered by his own ears, and no drones in front of him, unfortunately. Unless West Garfield Park want to allocate the 1 drone they have remaining off the flanker wherever it is, there's no intel to be gained by the Sens on the top floor beyond what he can hear with those ears. Not to say there's people roaming. Well, there is, but not many. But if Biologic is still able to catch this one off guard, that is a very useful position. Doesn't even know he's there. First kill was the way of West Garfield. That's an incredibly powerful position and very impactful kill achieved by West Garfield Park. He can now make or you play off the holes pre-made in the top floor. The Razor still gets the planar, drops it in sight. A 3K for Bio. His lurk on the top floor working out as he makes his way down to the site. Potentially a 4K if he wants to finish off Razor. And an ace. If he does that, then spots NVK down in VIP at the moment. Valor now moving in for the plant. Some intel for NVK to play off of, but before it even goes to a post plant, Valor finishes him off. West Garfield Park get their first round on the board.
A little bit of an unorthodox way to have the top floor cleared, I suppose, or at least the odd player to go for that, but it worked out. Nobody had any idea that Bio was actually on that top floor. He worked his way down, denied the vertical, which was the biggest problem that West Garfield were facing at the current moment, trying to hop into sight, and that forced the lurk game as well to be a little shaken up as they didn't have that reassurance that the plant could be denied properly. They had to get a little more aggressive. West Garfield was at the ready for that. They won those critical gunfights and just had the round secured outright just based off of winning those pretty substantial 1-for-1s. Reading Room now in the option book here for one shot, as they don't really seem to want to try to re-attempt that bottom floor site for the moment being.
We'll go up to Reading Room, where it's a little bit easier to have a top floor presence. You know, you can have a couple players inside of Cocktail on that third floor, whereas on Kitchen, not something you can very effectively do. NBK also bringing the castle, I believe it's again, or at least wanting to have some more utility, influence where the attackers can push through or rotate through, or even just make them clear some more utility, whatever they decide to do. West Garfield Park, that isn't exactly the biggest concern in their mind right now, as we see at least one off pick come out and one more standard pick recently. I'm looking at the Nook and the Amaru from Slippery and Rice right now. Maybe the Nook trying to go in for a flank up through that first floor, maybe up red or white stairs, and then Rice probably just going to fly in through cigar window, or cocktail window. That's my guess.
Rice does have the diffuser. I couldn't imagine he'd want to try going in through one of the hatches on the bottom floor to go up into sight and try to get that defuse down, or going in through, of course, the fireplace window. Just seems way too risky and too much of a gamble. Looks like he'll opt to go for the safer option of just going up near that top floor, maybe utilizing some of those flashbangs, having that G8 LMG as well, just to be a blunt spearhead in towards this top floor. Seems like the better option, especially when you have your teammates to back you up as well. The time management is going to have to be huge here for West Garfield as well, as if they cannot clear out this top floor in a manageable time, that will definitely mess up a lot of their vertical potential, and in general just weaken the option of trying to go in for that site push towards those final dying moments of the round.
A lot of utility in their way to make good use of that time. One of the walls looking into freezer electrified, so if they want to contain or eliminate a position that the defense could potentially play, specifically the one Razor's playing right now, looking in through those floor holes he made with that Aruni punch. Going to have to try and find some kind of nade, but then again, there's also there's actually no hard breaching. I just assumed that Rice might have hard breach charges in his back pocket, but no hard breaching whatsoever for West Garfield on the attack, so not really gonna have to worry about that too much if you don't even have an option to go with it. He's starting to make his way down to the bottom floor as well, where Slippery is at the moment. Some very quick mid-floor control established by West Garfield. Maybe not quick because it's been half the round, but some presence in mining.
Well, my light call might have actually been able to come true here for Rice. He's just prowling about underneath this hatch, Carter. There might be an option. He just waltzes in with that Garo hook and either tries to get a plant down or just work some sort of pick. As West Garfield, they are in a pretty good position to potentially have this play work. They just need to take a couple more seconds to gather that information and potentially try to work a pick as well, as it's still that 5-on-5.
They still have players who can rotate down from the top floor, and Kilo on white stairs as well to shut this down immediately if West Garfield's coverage is not precise. But both concussions go out. They stop Kilo, but he wins this fight, or at least trades it out. Slippery able to have some big impact on that Nook. Sure, he died, but he minimized that position. But Prod makes his way into red. No one is watching. Oh no, not even in red. Just makes his way into reading and shoots through the default floor holes. A major oversight by West Garfield to not account for one of the most default plant denial spots on Reading Room and Fireplace. Now with the diffuser dropped inside of the site, you don't have a second Amaru to fly up that hatch and recover it. If you want to try and get that diffuser, you have to walk on in, and you'll have to walk right in front of Prod to do it. Snake and Bio, both on that middle floor, can maybe try to swing him and trade it out, but that still leaves Razor, I think NVK as well on that top floor, or at least Razor with that vertical hole to look in and watch anybody pushing in through mining. Auto waited out for the time being. NBK watching another angle as well. Every angle covered by one shot so far, and one kill looking to go their way. It's achieved by NBK first and foremost, while Bio and Snake both put down to low HP. Prod can just wait. Razor, NBK, they can just wait. Prod can watch, and as the Finka goes to recover the diffuser, down she goes. Bio will peek and can't find a single solitary soul willing to take an engagement. One shot shut that play down very easily.
And at the get-go of that round, or at least of that play, I should say, it looked to be quite beautiful. We had the calls being given by Bio, gathering information, forcing back the Jaeger as well as Lifeline Concussive Blast. You had that Jaeger and Slippery as well on the Nook 1-for-1 trade. There goes your position in white, and now you have the Gara hook going up through the hatch, beginning to pressure that plant, but because there was no one on the top floor to establish vertical, or no one even just trying to enter in through the site of Reading Room, we had Prod just have a pretty free line of sight to go and stop that plant from happening or really being any kind of nuisance whatsoever. And like I mentioned a few moments ago, the vertical still being alive and well, that allowed one shot to get some kills essentially for free, no strings attached. They reclaim the man advantage and just close out the round quite successfully, even though that one-off strat at the very beginning looked pretty promising for West Garfield.
And if they had brought some hard breaching and maybe destroyed the electricity on that freezer wall, denied Razor from playing in there, that take probably could have worked. Sure, you still had Prod to worry about. Maybe West Garfield were able to take control of freezer, look down inside of the site, and things go differently. Just a little bit more work probably could have made that work out. Or even then, maybe if you just get lucky and another gunfight goes your way, that could also work too, because it did come down to a 3v3. We'll go back to Cocktail for the top floor. This worked out very well for one shot. It was a flawless round to end things out, where West Garfield Park, they got some good control, but after losing a body to a run out and another one as they made their way into their push, down long haul and into the site itself, they pretty much just walked right into one-shots, crossfires, and all the positions they were playing since the beginning of the round.
In terms of map control, West Garfield were able to close the gap, but they just weren't really able to confirm any kills alongside that map control, especially letting Razor get away with leaving Bathroom as well, and then able to run out later in the round to force that 5 versus 3 and completely confuse West Garfield as to what their next move is on that round. Still having the flank being keenly guarded, not by Claymore, but this time an air jab, just to really tie in home that West Garfield do not want to lose that man advantage early on. And it seems like besides that, they're still going in for the exact same push we had last time, establishing that window presence early on and potentially trying to clear out Razor before he becomes too much of a threat in this round.
Not a lot of hard breaching for West Garfield Park right now, both in terms of what they brought, but also what they have remaining. Only 6 X-Kairos remaining for West Garfield, as they used 2 to open up both the roof hatches on top of New Balk and on top of Red, and also 6 remaining X-Kairos to open up some holes, or I think actually 8 remaining X-Kairos to open up holes on top of that Christmas wall. So you have to be very careful where they decide to allocate the remaining ones, but also, even then, might not be enough. NVK takes down Slippery, who was the main player to push down Whitehall, and while it wasn't successful, losing all the utility that Finka has and the position that Slippery was playing, if one shot just rotate back and don't get aggressive whatsoever, that's exactly what they probably should do with Finka off the board.
They still have Razor close to Bathroom as well. Not too sure if the shield has been destroyed yet, but the major lack of explosivity here by West Garfield is definitely going to be a major challenge moving this next minute 10, because they just aren't really able to clear out a lot of those power positions properly unless they get very proactive with those flashes, which as of right now, you've got Valor on the window rappel, and then Rice, I believe he's still just taking his time, maybe gathering more information and still setting up over near Ticket to then try to flush Razor out, but he's already moved back towards the site, Carter.
Yeah, and also the rest of West Garfield have just hopped on in, smoked the 2 angles in Freezer. As Biologic moves on in, he unfortunately falls to Razor. Though Valor trades it out with some expert coverage on Cocktail Window, ends up favoring West Garfield as they just decide to flood the site and cut their losses. Prod has to rotate back up, and Gil can't really do much from the angle he's playing right now. Ooh, Prod losing a lot of HP to Snake playing in Freezer. This seems like it's going to go West Garfield's way by just, again, cutting their losses and sending it. Both remaining one-shot players on White Stairs, and Valor has this exact angle covered. Neither defender opting to go for a jump out of White Window at the moment, instead trying to hedge their bets inside of the site. They've retaken Freezer control, but West Garfield have started to move back. Kilo finally goes for that jump out, but Valor trades it out fairly easily. Beautiful shot by Kilo. Now the only player to worry about is on that rappel. Knows exactly where he is. No C4 to deal with, but he might be able to make the tight angle work. He goes for the swing, but only puts him to 1 HP. Time running out. Only 3 seconds left. He's either got to stick it or Valor has to make a play as he goes for the hop on in. The flashes come through. If Kilo wants to win this, he has to stick it. Unfortunate timing, but beautiful recovery by West Garfield.
And fantastic isolation by Kilo, but just how many flashes we had in the pocket of Valor. It just seemed like basically an impossible task to accomplish there, having the Nomad play that position so well and really forcing the hand of that Mute to make the initiative, trying to get out that diffuser and just wasting more and more time. It just really wasn't meant to be. West Garfield now able to equalize us 2-2 going in round number 5 after a great opportunity founded by them. They realized, well, there's really no point in trying to fully clear out Cigar, trying to potentially deal with that player still in Bathroom that caused us so much chaos last time. Let's just hit the site, as we acknowledge there's still roamers about, and just try to play at that man advantage. It eventually worked. They clear out the site fully and got the plant down, and we're pretty much in a perfect position, especially since those air jabs were still alive and the run out was being watched quite well by Valor.
Good attempt by Kilo as well, though, almost bringing it back. Just one more bullet hits onto Valor sitting outside on that cocktail rappel. That round goes his way. One shot up 3-1 right now. But they lose it. Maybe not consequently, maybe unrelated entirely. We will see Mining on attack on Kafe at the moment. That West Garfield Park will have to attack. Again, another thing brought up on the desk that Tanner mentioned, some teams liking to try out that mining site a little bit more. It's coming a little bit more into play as the few times the map ends up getting played. We sometimes see how West Garfield Park opt to take this while they go for the standard, push up red, try to acquire mining control in combination with some vertical inside of Christmas, or are they trying to go for something different?
Seems like for West Garfield, it wouldn't be the worst idea to try to get that vertical established, but since Bio is actually rocking in for that sledge and still having enough nades and proper utility to potentially flush out a majority of this top floor presence, except for potentially NVK. If he's able to utilize those smart glass, he can maybe get the one up on a couple players that are only relying on those flashes, and especially since we've had one shot win these entries a good portion of these rounds, if you lose again some of those valuable sets of grenades, you're going to have to be very conservative with them, which again could be a golden moment for NVK just to utilize those glasses and potentially find another kill to make it a very strong lead for one shot.
Starting off with the Finka like he did last time was very impactful, even if one shot ended up losing the round. So doing that 2 times in a row, excellent stat to have, or excellent thing to consider moving forward on your defenses if you're able to keep making that happen. West Garfield Park starting on that top floor. Bio on the cocktail repel at the moment, cooking a nade, could very well find it land right in front of the Malusi, but NVK does get that first kill, not onto the Finka, onto the Twitch. Both him and Kilo fall down as a result, so you lose the Twitch, but lose that Jaeger and that Warden. Might not be a lot in terms of utility, but that's that top floor gone, with West Garfield Park clearing it very quickly.
And the smokes aren't going to be that effective when trying to go in for a full-fledged site execute, so it's not really that big of a concern. What's probably going to be the biggest obstacle here for West Garfield might end up being the smoke cancers, but they've got a minute 20 to kill. They've got the man advantage. It's not going to be that big of a deal so long as they're just able to effectively gather this vertical and also potentially find another kill, or at least set themselves up to have the execute go off properly with no strings attached.
1 nade left in Bio's pocket. Obviously, they have the man advantage, but if they're able to take down that player in dining, that's a lot of work they don't really have to do. Because right now, you might need to have Slippery actively play that hatch, make sure that person playing in dining either can't make use of that angle or doesn't start rotating up, but if they deal with that position entirely, they'll still have to watch it. They can maybe hold it a little bit more passively, focusing instead on some other positions. Still 45 seconds remaining, of course, so Bio will start reconstructing the floor of the site, start opening up holes above Train, above Swalen as well, who now has to worry about that, and a player dropping down onto the hatch outside of mining. That window open up. Ooh, does spot one, and with the spray, cuts down Bio, switches to the shotgun. Got a 2-piece right here, but Hibana not wanting to press their luck so far. Rice will hang back for the time being, instead just throwing in some flashbangs. Starting to run low on time. Can't just sit outside that window using utility the whole time. Need to start making a push on in. Slippery hoping that maybe they could expedite this attack, but Rice, ends up falling on that window angle. So now Slippery's got to start moving forward. Can't win this round by going prone. Got to start moving on in. Him on the middle floor and Snake on the top floor, but neither with Diffuser. He's got to hop out, hop back in, and fall to the DMR from Razor. Nobody cleared that position a single time that entire round, and it'll win one shot, their 3rd defense.
And again, the lack of explosivity in that round costed West Garfield greatly. That shield being alive, allowing perfect coverage, I suppose, for the Aruni to just sit in the middle of the site. I'm a little shocked that no one acknowledged the Aruni's presence, maybe didn't even try to go for some grenade tosses over near the single window of fireplace. Even if there is utility there, you still had countless flashbangs. It was more or less just that lack of proper time management by West Garfield that really costed that round in particular as well. Really shocked that we had Swalen also kill the vertical player as well. It definitely relieved a lot of pressure off the backs of everybody on the side of one shot, because not only do you have less lines of sight to worry about vertically, but also, again, that grenade presence, it just seemed non-existent towards the final 40 seconds, so all that one shot had to do was just sit back and wait for the attackers to eventually re-enter the building and try to go for that plant.
Definitely stalling a lot outside of the building, especially once they got low on time there. Rice just stuck outside that window. Even with the man advantage, it's very difficult to make that work, especially with all the long angles one shot had at their disposal. They'll go to the other 2nd floor bomb site now, instead shifting to reading. And it was not really maybe the explosives West Garfield had or lacked in this case, but more so the control that West Garfield didn't get. They let Razor exist on that top floor, and as a result, they didn't really have an answer for prod and meeting, so once they sent Namaru up dining hatch, they died fairly quickly. The angles that one shot had created once the prep phase ended and the action phase started. They won't go for the same strategy this time. No Nook or Amaru to make that play work. Probably going for a traditional full clear of the top floor.
Would hope so, especially once again having the sledge here for Bio so you can get that vertical down. Just need to get it done in a timely manner to actually be able to utilize it properly, and also hope to clear out the roam presence enough where you still have a decent man count up and alive so you can have someone actively watching into that vertical throughout the entire round. Having that overwatch, especially if you can get that diffuser down, it goes such a long way for West Garfield, as it does force the defenders to have to potentially retake that top floor to deny that vertical presence outright. But for the most part, West Garfield, they've been very 50-50 in terms of how effective they can clear out this top floor. There have also been rounds where they tend to just completely ignore it, and it's ended up biting them in the rear. So this time, West Garfield trying to be as proactive as they can. Having someone out on the main skylight and already getting control of piano is definitely a step in the right direction.
Hard breach charge opening up, or not hard breach charge, but a blowtorch specifically, opening up that freezer wall. It's not as explosive, but certainly as effective. You just create one line across, and for very little primary utility, you've now made it extremely difficult to play inside a freezer. Thought maybe that Razor actually sprinted into the freezer itself, but nope, he instead sprinted out of the room entirely and onto white stairs. Definitely the smarter of the two decisions, and as a result, he even gets a kill on white window. Bio, prepped and maybe waiting for that angle, loses his fight with the DMR, and now One Shot could definitely play a lot more reserved now that they've got the opening pick.
Potentially try to retake this top floor as well. If West Garfield begin to tunnel vision only on the site push itself, that could be a big way for One Shot to potentially reclaim that main advantage, but they've already done via a Nitro Cell by Prod. Snake falls down, and once again, you're very low on frag grenades, but at least the gun skill is still there. Slippery equalizes, Prod will fall.
Slippery has been very impactful so far. Of course, he's the only one from West Garfield Park to get 2 kills, but without him, One Shot strategy of giving up that control, then using the C4 to make it what would have been a 5v3, excellent play. Can be a little risky, but if they're able to make it work, very powerful. But here, Slippery able to make it a 3v3 with this vertical control and plenty of time as well. I was going to say, things are looking very good, but Swaylin gets aggro, and with one singular shotgun shell, makes things advantageous for One Shot. Rice and Valor will just drop through the laundry hatch as a result, slowly making their way through reading, but Rice is operating off of low intel, has to react to Kilo, and doesn't react in time. Valor hasn't left the laundry position whatsoever. He knows that the Jaeger is inside of dining now, but that came at the cost. That bit of intelligence came at the cost of his teammate's life, and the diffuser dropped inside of reading proper. Starts pre-firing through the wall, but just above the head of Kilo. So close to the 1v2, but just an inch separates that. Ooh, another one separates NVK. I'm not sure what's happening right now. Valor might be having a little bit of troubles, either in the aim or the connection or what have you. Whatever it is, not much he can do in that case, and One Shot, they move up 4-2.
And in those last 30 seconds, Swaylin really showed how effective Smoke can be at completely halting a push starting out on that top floor and having to move into that middle ground to actually begin to tease that execute from happening. He had the smoke to deny one portion of the map. It forced basically a funnel into a Mossberg at close quarters. That is just a recipe for disaster. And West Garfield, begrudgingly, they had to fall right into it. And even then, they had NVK guarding a potential pillar drop down. He could have shot anyone in the back as he was waiting near that brown/bar stairs. And Kilo also just holding down the front directly inside of Fireplace, able to back up Swaylin if need be. It was just a perfect setup for that 3 versus 3. Really nothing outlandish either done by One Shot. They were just playing into their own strengths that they had and eventually just forced West Garfield to make that first move, which they weren't really in a position to do properly.
Up 4-2 half for One Shot on their defenses. Definitely something to be happy about. Plus as well, doing very good on the entry engagements throughout that entire half. Taking it most of the time, though West Garfield Park also did a good job of trading it out in at least half of the rounds that they played. But still, One Shot able to get that first pick fairly consistent throughout the first 6 rounds. Maybe they'll be able to recreate some of that success here, as you can clearly see all the utility being placed inside of Cigar and Christmas. West Garfield Park are seeking to hold this, at least with utility, fairly aggressively with all the castle barricades and the Rooney gates, and hey, even the pixel shield, because why the hell not?
I really don't blame them. You can get away with a lot and could almost confirm a round outright if you are able to completely halt One Shot from getting any proper control over near Cigar, for example, even near Shop as well. Those Sky Chargers will be utilized to get those castle barricades opened up, and with the amount of flashes that are on the board for One Shot, it seems like although there's a lot of utility thrown at them, they've got tons of stuns of their own to back that up and still potentially give West Garfield a run for their money in terms of this extension, but the timing and team play has to be very precise, as you're going to allow Valor to rebuild up those magnets and even potentially reshoot one of those Siri gates that gets destroyed via flash grenade.
I was about to say, timing almost went One Shot's way. Razor spotted Valor just standing in the middle of Pixel out from behind that shield, but only tags him in the shoulder and doesn't finish him off, unfortunately. So a lost moment for One Shot to maybe gain some advantage or gain some momentum. But still in a 5v5, you'll just have to play things normally and clear out that utility. Snake also now put to 1 HP and finished off by Razor. Might not be Pixel, but 1, that's the smoke down, and 2, that's the Humidor position cleared out, where sometimes we see teams just drop Red Hatch and get completely stuck on it. One Shot clearing it very effectively and can now fully focus on Pixel if they want to make their way that way.
No longer having to worry about the smoke is definitely a huge benefit for One Shot, and still having tons of utility actually burn through that shield and force back Valor as well. It's going to allow a lot of great map control to be in the pocket of One Shot, on top of once again winning that opening duel. You see One Shot beginning to reset up to fully confirm they can remove this player stacked up in Piano, which will give them a lot more room to breathe moving into this final minute 10.
The magnet set on White Window. Worried that maybe a nade will sail on through, as Valor is realizing there's not a lot of players in front of my shield now. Maybe they're going to come from the windows behind me, to the right of me. Does face another shot, loses a little bit of HP. Shield goes down as well, so he'll start pushing into Christmas as a whole. But One Shot's starting to feel a little bit stopped up. They're getting these kills, but a lot of the position for West Garfield, especially the forward ones, still in their hand. With Valor moving to low HP and Rice as well, this is very winnable for One Shot, even with that fact. Biologic jumps out, tries to get aggressive as he should, but hops right into a Claymore. Valor is trapped by an innumerable amount of one-shot players. Razor going very big. Nice shot from Valor, but he's got 4 to make, and only 1 goes his way. One Shot win their first attacking round and widen the lead between them and West Garfield Park.
And not even the fact that we had Swalen find any kills except for that Claymore elimination. Just having the angle to make sure that Valor was basically in a rock and a hard space. He could not leave that part of the map for any good reason. He had to play there to die. And speaking of death, I mean, all of his teammates were just dropping dead across the entire map. You had NVK waiting for anyone to potentially over-aggress to alleviate some of that pressure over on the side of Valor, trying to retake Humidor. It just did not work out, as NVK remained very disciplined in that position. And also, again, having those cutoffs and having a multifaceted push really went a long way for One Shot. And they are just getting closer and closer towards that match point position. And I believe now we finally have a timeout being procced by West Garfield, as something has to change on their side.
I doubt we'll see them try Cocktail again, or if they do, they'll certainly go with something different, because that wasn't even really West Garfield Park doing anything egregious or wrong. That was just One Shot clearing out their positions very effectively. So if they want to go to Cocktail again, definitely don't want to do that. But Cocktail also as a site has started to trend towards the attack. I know Tanner just mentioned Kafe as a whole, but Cocktail specifically is one of the sites that the attack can sometimes find an easy time making use of, or clearing out. Just sitting on Repel, nading out Pixel, pushing that player back. So maybe going to a site like Reading or like Kitchen, make things a little bit easier for them, providing another facet. They won't go to Reading, they won't go to Kitchen, but they will go to Mining and Dining. So it's not just One Shot who can go to that. West Garfield Park can, but how much use they can make of it, and whether they can defend it effectively, is to be determined. We saw West Garfield Park, we saw One Shot have a little bit of a presence on that top floor, and even though it was cleared out, West Garfield Park failed to clear out the remaining site players that had an impact from those long angles, either inside of Dining or inside of Reading, and they lost the round as a result. Will One Shot make that same mistake, or will they be a little bit more diligent in getting the angles that they need, and also clearing out the players and the positions that could counter them?
Potentially a huge gamble for West Garfield opting to head towards this site, especially if you have a team that's all business for the most part, and no sense of casualness when they are going in for a lot of these clears. Prod even doubling down on trying to have this roam clear go off with no strings attached, bring out the Jackal for those Inox scanners to potentially allow that sense of dread and almost a sense of we need to fall back earlier than expected here for West Garfield, because our position is known. We could potentially get forced out by someone on the window repel, or just someone beginning to aggress our position from those key areas like Cigar Shop, like that top floor presence, or the roof presence, I should say, sorry, near the skylight as well. It could just be a lot to handle all at the exact same time, and it could just end up collapsing upon West Garfield. So they have to be very careful about the next moves they make when dealing with this top floor clear.
One player from West Garfield will already move, drop down to that bottom floor. So a lot of the focus will now be on Slippery, who has not given up his position. Valor as well, albeit... Oh, actually, no, never mind. Slippery also playing behind the deployable shield, so both given equal focus in this case. Thought maybe one was just lurking while the other was holding a little bit more stalwartly, but no. both behind utility right now in terms of deployable shields. Likely both behind utility in terms of magnets, given by Valor. Likely a lot of that bias towards Christmas is that tends to be the position that gains more focus. First kill, though, goes the way of West Garfield. Valor able to cut down Razor, who has been very effective on that rappel. Got the first pick last time on the player inside of the human door. So not only getting rid of that Finka, very impactful, but also that position and not having to worry about that angle, big for West Garfield.
A major sigh of relief for West Garfield, still opting to give up a majority, if not that entire top four. Definitely seems a little bit off. They definitely could have wasted even more valuable seconds, since One Shot are still opting to clear out all of this, but seems like they don't have the information as of right now that West Garfield have completely given up that position, so seems like it's not the worst idea for West Garfield. Just to at least guarantee they hold on to that man advantage for a little while longer. Only big issue, though, is if One Shot can properly set up in the next 20 to 30 seconds with that vertical presence in the hand of NVK, that could potentially allow for the refrag to be collected sooner rather than later.
They have to do it by gunplay. NVK's nade misses. It's the only thing that can really work into nice tricky spot. Okay, I don't really know what the hell that was, but excellent shot and spray by NVK. Quick reaction as well, just to cut down Slippery. He still has that nade as well, so if he's able to maybe throw it into a tricky spot inside of Train or inside of Mining or Dining for that matter, to make this a 4v3 on top of his already Herculean effort. An impact superhero landing on that white stairs. It's Swalen instead to take the lead as he takes reading control, not the site, as it is still Mining and Dining, but still a very powerful angle, not only to hold for the attack, but to deny for the defense. Rice spots NVK on top of that Train hatch, and is able to bring it back, at least to even between the two teams. Keep himself alive inside of Training. West Garfield Park, also their guns coming alive in general. The One Shot able to keep it even. Rice spots the Jackal for just a second. It's Biologic to cut down his teammate. Prod having to clutch the 1v2, but it's a 1v1 on site, as there's only one player down below, but not enough time to get even one of these kills. He has to stick the diffuser down and pray that West Garfield Park either stall themselves out or just cede the round completely and let West Garfield Park get their first defense.
And the gamble, it most definitely worked out for West Garfield. They were able to win that opening duel, that being in the hand of Valor, and immediately West Garfield, they acknowledge, well, we've got the man advantage. Let's just fall back and hope that One Shot end up self-stalling themselves, and it seemed like that is roughly what happened. We did have NVK get a little aggressive, winning a 1-for-1 and actually equalizing us, but there was still a lot to do throughout the rest of that round, still gathering more information with those drones and Inox scanners, and it still was not enough, as there were only about 30 seconds left, and West Garfield were still willing and able to secure those 1-for-1 isolations and completely halt One Shot from accomplishing much besides clearing out that top floor.
Moving to reading now, they're able to accomplish taking this top floor. Would certainly still be very advantageous for One Shot. The vertical control can make such a big difference on reading between a successful take and an unsuccessful take. Even if that vertical control comes at 45 seconds, if you're going in with a 5v4 or a 5v3, you can still make it work, even with maybe less time on the clock than would be ideal otherwise. Of course, if West Garfield Park are able to get aggressive, maybe Valor takes down Razor early on like he was able to last time, that would certainly lift the weight off of West Garfield Park's shoulders by a very large extent. Even if it's only one kill, taking down that Finko like they did in round 8 would just be a sigh of relief for anybody off-site.
It doesn't really seem that One Shot would be all that phased about losing last round. They're still at a decent advantage, and they still have a lot of time to readjust. They've got a timeout as well if really need be. They just have to potentially make sure that Valor cannot be put in a position where he can properly get that 1-for-1 and then allow the fallback to happen earlier than anticipated by West Garfield. They have to make sure, for One Shot being, that they have to set that precedent in terms of pace and also make sure that they still have enough time to properly get that execute underway. Because again, I mentioned this earlier, when West Garfield were the ones attacking, it can be quite difficult, even with the vertical, to begin to work your way a floor lower, especially when you have people like that Smoke to deal with and a lot of choke points that you still haven't properly flushed out.
The two rivals from round 8 might just duel in the first minute and a half. Valor and Razor. With Slippery also right next to Womai, but definitely Valor and Razor might be the two players who duke it out once again. The Razor is concerned about a jump out from red window at the moment. Nobody's there, or at least at that window. Biologic is at another one, but now it is air jab, so if he runs out, he'll probably be a dead man. One Shot can react in time. Razor now going for the swing. Doesn't spot anybody just yet, but angles are opening up in front of him. Looking for maybe a spray through the wall, but everyone from West Garfield, or at least everyone on that top floor, save for just one player, have all now jumped back down to the middle floor.
But having people on that cocktail rappel definitely does force the hand of the defense to make the move to eventually retreat. You don't want to lose any life while trying to eventually go on that fallback when you've wasted a fair amount of time. No entry found just yet by either side, and it really is only a matter of seconds before we begin to see that vertical play go down. But at least West Garfield, they didn't lose any life along that fallback. They definitely picked that moment to go a floor lower at just the right time, and now they can still hold up those key positions and still potentially try to stall out one shots. They still have tons of utility in their back pocket.
Yeah, plenty of smokes. No C4s, unfortunately, to play that vertical with, though. So if they want to try to contest that, it'll have to be by swinging or maybe doing any accidental damage or small damage, incremental damage to that toxic canister if they want to use that on the vertical play. I mentioned that this site can still be a success for the attack, even if they only establish vertical with 45 seconds left. It's a 5v5 right now, so no advantage gained. It is manageable, but I did not say it'd be easy, because One Shot are facing some daunting odds, especially now that Snake takes down NVK, who was that player up above. Kilo will just sprint on in through the toxic canister. Biologic might have intel in this position. Nobody covering with no vertical and nobody on that reading doorway. He can go huge with a 2K. Now Swaylin and Razor have to compensate for that earlier loss. Razor drops down, finds one. Swaylin struggling to pick up the second kill for One Shot. Put down to 1 HP. It's Razor with the 2-piece. He's got full sight control, but not a 3K in hand. West Garfield Park close the lead to just one round before things are tied up.
And things were looking decent, being put in the right positions. Having NVK be a little bit safer on that vertical to guarantee he could be there to actually try to cover that plant, but him still eventually falling by the hand of Snake and having Finka multitasking both a flank potentially over near either Brownstairs or Pillar and someone pushing in through the site, just ended up trying to take that gamble that someone would push Pillar first before trying to work their way past the vertical and potentially another line of sight to deal with while that plant was going down. A gamble simply not paying off for One Shot, costing the round, and that gap I talked about that One Shot had the luxury of owning seems to be getting smaller and smaller as West Garfield are adjusting quite well after taking that time out.
Go down to Kitchen, which we have not seen from them so far. Only site they have lost is Cocktail, by the way, so not only do they feel comfortable enough to try all these sites, the only one that hasn't been successful tends to be the ones that are a little bit more difficult for the defense to make work. So for Kitchen, looking very good. Of course, depends on what One Shot go with. They could go for that full clear. We saw that getting the vertical can be problematic for West Garfield Park, and required Biologic just crouch walking from the top floor down to the middle floor. And to be fair, once he got that vertical, he was able to get a 3K as he entered the site as well. But it's still something One Shot likely need to focus on, even if they're just going for a bakery direct. Even if they do that, there's a Cade Claw, maybe even two, that they have to worry about.
So at some point, they have to go in for that vertical, even if they want to go for more of a direct option, like you had mentioned. In terms of directness, it seems like NVK wants to have a direct lead in this round. He already eliminates Snake, someone who was very problematic towards the dying moments of round number 9. So definitely a lot of weight taken off the shoulders of NVK as he begins to work his way all the way up on towards that roof. A runout could have been potentially teased, but it's not going to come into fruition, as I could imagine. West Garfield, they either don't have the information or just don't want to risk putting themselves potentially in that 5 versus 3 position.
And with Snake down, I imagine he's probably going to play on that middle floor, maybe in coat check, maybe maybe floating between VIP, maybe trying to take one of those positions in case somebody falls. So now you might not lose anything massive in terms of utility, but you will definitely be a little bit more strapped for positions if maybe your coat check player falls or your VIP player falls. Not really someone who can fill that gap anymore like you might have had if Snake was still alive. Everyone playing on the bottom floor for West Garfield means that unless something insane happens, this will be a 4v5, probably about 30 to 45 seconds from now, and they still have that coat check and still have that VIP position. It'll be a lot easier for One Shot to take it with still plenty of utility in their pockets and progressing very nicely on this full clear.
Already beginning to move their way a floor lower. Definitely good pacing by One Shot. As long as they can get that vertical down in about that minute 20 mark, even the minute 10 mark, it wouldn't be all that challenging. They just have to make sure they can dance around that one Nitro Cell in the pocket of Slipper. And again, that more or less depends on his positioning. Seems like he's still over near coat check, trying to hold some longer angles with that 1.5 optics. Sees the Sledgehammer go to work, goes for the C4 toss-up, but it gets caught on the metal rebar, allowing NVK to fall back and still have that man advantage for One Shot, as Slippery now has to readjust and potentially go back towards site.
Unfortunate loss of an opportunity for West Garfield. They have the breach charges from Swaylin, of course, but Not having to worry about the nades from the sledge or the sledgehammer to get even more vertical control would have been a sigh of relief after losing Snake early on. Of course, one nade has to be used to destroy that electric claw, but that still leaves one for a kill for One Shot to make a 5v4 into a 5v3, and even better, more comfortable execute once One Shot start moving in towards the site. They've been uncontested on this top floor, save for that missed C4 by Slippery, opening up all the angles they want to, both through the floor and inside of the site, to create even longer angles to maybe find a player or watch the plant and the diffuser later on. Rice will start throwing his toxic canisters. One goes down to choke out that freezer drop. There isn't exactly a lot of time for One Shot if they want to drop. Only 30 seconds remaining and 20 seconds of damage for Rice to deal if he's able to plant them in the right spot. Also no bottom white control for One Shot as well. This will be a hectic freezer drop. Kilo just sprints on in, starts planting inside a bunker. The smoke canister goes out, and Rice falls to the vertical control. Beautiful angle by NBK and great coverage for One Shot. Slip goes to retake, but he retakes too late. He might be able to find NBK, who's so focused on the middle floor, but he doesn't look at either of them. He walks past both One Shot players. And this is match point in the making right here, unless Valor makes probably the best play in CL if he clutches a 1v4 on 1 HP. Flashbang lands directly in front of him, rips away his sense of sight. Sense of this round also slowly going away. No intel to play off of. Knows one might be bottom white, but he sprints right into it. Swalem cuts him down. One shot, take match point.
And because the vertical pressure was so strong, it didn't really seem like VIP needed to be cleared out. You just have your player with diffuser just hop down into sight, maybe have somebody back him up holding on one of the hard walls, potentially inside a freezer. You get that diffuse down, and because the smoke was basically trapped and didn't have a long enough distance to actually throw out those grenades properly to stop a plant from happening, it seemed like just the perfect concoction for One Shot to guarantee they secure match point. Things were a little close at Sir Moltz, but again, having Kilo just slip through the cracks and get that plant down, along with having multiple assets on that middle floor, watching for vertical, making sure no defender could properly retake. It was just all way too much for West Garfield, and then they just had to retake in a pretty poor position outright, Carter.
One Shot able to win one more defensive site, whereas West Garfield have had some fairly sizable success so far, and now West Garfield forced to go back to Cocktail or retry Kitchen, of course, but out of the two options, they opt for not retrying Kitchen. Cocktail wasn't exactly all sunshine and rainbows for West Garfield on the defense. Razor was able to get a kill on Rice inside of the Humidor very early on, and the rest of the players in Pixel or in various positions around the site just started to fall one by one, even with some positions off the site, such as, I believe Pixel was in the control of Valor even up until the dying seconds of the round. One Shot were able to get the picks that they needed and start pushing on in. This is looking troublesome for West Garfield Park, or the sites they have remaining.
Yeah, One Shot were very surgical and methodical about going around this full clear on the top floor, having that window pressure as a constant, immediately stopping anyone from holding on through Humidor to slow down that piano push overall, and again, having that discipline as well. I highlighted NVK in particular, just sitting at the top of red, waiting for someone to back up Valor. It was huge, and we just managed to catch Prod shooting out the Nitro Cell. That could have been a great Hail Mary attempt for the Mute, but unfortunately with it not finding a single connection even onto the ground, it still remains that 5-on-5, and now Snake, he has to swallow his pride and just begin to fall back.
Only C4 that West Garfield Park had available as well, so if Snake wanted to rotate down and maybe deny the plant later on, or even just deny it inside of the site, no longer an option. They have to rely solely on those toxic canisters, and with how easily One Shot were able to get the man advantage early on, with Rice being the first pick in that previous cocktail attack, this is looking not great for West Garfield Park. If even a similar trend continues, Rice has rotated out of that position. He's inside of Whitehall instead of the Humidor. That's just one more bit of control that One Shot don't even have to put up an effort to clear.
40 remains. The shield eventually gets destroyed, but Valor does have a second one over in Bathroom, so he could hold this position a little longer than what we saw last time this top floor site was in play. But besides that, it still seems to be a very methodical clear by One Shot outright. They just need to guarantee they time these last couple of util tosses out properly to guarantee that Valor will not be a problem.
Bio waiting down below. Same with Snake. Both on that middle floor. Again, no C4 for him to make work, but hell, maybe he can just catch One Shot off guard. Maybe they treat the middle floor as cleared. Take it for granted. Take that bit of control as an assumption. Then he can use the shotgun from below, or maybe even the SMG-11 inside a pillar to get an easy pick and alleviate some of the pressure that the players in sight will be feeling. First flashbang goes out and unfortunately misses the Aruni gate, so Prod will not be able to clear that just yet. Might have to even use a nade to clear it if the flashbangs don't work out. No, NBK instead uses a drone. Only 4 remaining, but with 45 seconds left, any utility you have is probably what you're going to remain with throughout the remainder of the game. And they start flooding into the site. Kilo sprints in from New Balk, one watching on Skylight and one watching just behind him. West Garfield Park, John, they don't have a single reaction. Not a single player moves to counter the push-in from one-shot LFO. They've got a post plant now with Prod on Skylight as well. Rice still gets the opening pick, but this is such a powerful angle for Prod to watch. Whoever's going to take this fight, they've got to win it. Biological peak, Bio falls. Not successful, but somebody does rotate out from Freezer. But Swaylin on Cocktail Repel as well, still able to hold a complete stranglehold on the site at the moment. Another explosive down below as well, but West Garfield Park keep it even. Slippery's going in for the defuse. Is anybody going to stop him? Somebody's got to stop him. There we go. Prod has to hop down. It's Snake to get Valor, though. Prod has to react in time. He doesn't even have to kill the remaining player. 7-4 for one shot as our first Kafe in Challenger League for Stage 2 goes the way of the favorites.
And nobody being able to properly watch the hatch drop down and a team kill falling through. Things could not get any worse for West Garfield Park during that retake. It was a good attempt, but the communication might have been a bit flustered as the timer was once again not favoring West Garfield Park in those final 30 seconds, and a great way to keep it consistent. I think that's the biggest thing that allowed One Shot to take a lot of rounds during that match, was just their overall consistency in comparison to West Garfield Park. They went for a lot of one-off strats, they tried getting creative, and a lot of those plays just simply did not work because of how steadfast we had and how stalwart One Shot were as well. Really good job by them just to close this one out and not even allow the plus 12 round possibility in that position.
Yeah, for One Shot that game, it didn't feel like, somebody was taking over. Didn't feel like somebody was, putting in a disproportionate amount of work. Everyone just seemed to show up, and One Shot got the job done. Beyond that, what more could you want from a team who so far has, like Tanner said, maybe had one of the best forms or best starts to the season, not only this roster has had so far, but definitely what most teams in the stage have had so far. So another win for One Shot to place under their belt, and unfortunately for West Garfield Park, their on-stream debut will have to be a regulation loss, and maybe we'll see them pick it up in another game. But that is enough for John and I right now. We can throw it to the desk to break down what is just one more victory for One Shot amongst many.
I'm glad Fellow said it, because I had the exact same idea, and that was consistency on the side of One Shot Cookies. I think this was a team that round in, round out, nothing seemed to fluster them. They had some obviously nice moments, I'm not taking away from their game, but, they just did the same thing every round, and that's how you get a 7-4 victory.
Okay, well, I guess we can start on their defensive half. It was round one was just run out central. I think two different runouts. Just West Garfield never had a chance in that round. Round two, you get an unconventional plant attempt. I'll put it like that out of West Garfield. And that kind of set the theme for a good chunk of their attacks. You have the Amaru trying to run up, what do you even want to call it? Amaru up the hatch into the site. And then you have Skylight drops. You have these kind of one-offy, very maniacal plays to try to throw One Shot off, and for the most part it didn't really work on the attacking Garfield, and One Shot was just exceptionally solid on their attacks, and it's really just it. I don't think West Garfield had much in the tank defensively forceful. I don't know if you want to add on that end.
I was muted. So to reiterate my points,
No,
it is what it is.
They were such good
TLDR.
points.
It was such
boy.
good points. So TLDR, One Shot's a veteran team. You take them to a map that they're comfortable on, one of their best maps. They're going to make things look real simple. Things like clearing out the cocktail or the cigar hold on Cocktail. That's something that a lot of CL teams in the past have struggled to make look good. And yet One Shot come in here and they made it look simple. They had everybody in the right positions, and they were just able to very easily clear out like every single attack that West Garfield had. There was only one round I think they looked rough, and the rest of it they looked really really solid.
hmm Well, once again, week after week, day after day, we're going to talk to Swaylin. We're going to ask him a few questions about his team. Oh, he's not ready quite yet at the moment. But Cookies,
Perfect.
the one thing that I want to talk about too, then now that we have a bit of time, is West Garfield Park. I don't feel like this looked like a loss where they were tripping over themselves or they had massive issues. I think they just faced a team that was better than them. And you know, the result just ended up being what should be expected when you do all the right things, but the other team just did it better.
I mean, as I said, it's perfectly personified in the fact that West Garfield was going like Bio he had a very curious play with Sense, right? Where
hmm
Sense is a very large operator making a lot of noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
He dropped some hatch or skylight above. He's crouch walking through the whole map, and he gets an opening kill on the Kilo of all players, our highlight player, and then he gets like a 3K to close around. It's like that's the type of round that West Garfield needed to like win. It took all that lining up. Otherwise, it was just like really felt kind of lopsided in the favor of one shot. Even though it was a 7-4, it could have very easily ended 7-2. Let's say if Kilo hears a freaking 3 armor, crouch walking around, that's a totally different round. So West Garfield, of course, they have gone back to the drawing board and had success before, and I don't think it'll be any different after this loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, with just a couple of tweaks, they could be right back in there. Now I do believe we have Swaylin ready. We'll ask him a few questions about the matchup. Swaylin, congratulations once again. The one thing that we were talking about, and the casters, the analysts as well, is the consistency with your team. Do you guys get a sense of that as well? Because it seems like day in, day out, you guys are putting up the numbers and doing everything right.
Yeah, it's definitely what we're striving for is,
hmm
consistency is key and just making sure that like we're just checking off the little steps, not skipping things, not rushing things.
hmm And now at this point, you guys are 3-0. You've gotten every point you could possibly get. Where do you go from here? Because you don't want to become complacent.
Yeah, definitely not. We're just, we're still gonna VOD review, see like what we messed up because we definitely made mistakes that game. It should have, not been that close. And then,
Mhm.
just focusing on tomorrow, obviously against Karn and Co. And then, just the games after that.
hmm Now, 3 matches so far. You've gone to 3 different maps. Is that something that was planned, or that you'll continue to do, or do you just take the maps as they come?
Um, Not to say too much, but we're just kind of looking
No,
at,
just give away all your strategy right here, right now, in front of
Yeah, we
everyone.
have strats for every single map. We're good on them all. But no,
hmm
we're just comfortable and just looking at what other teams are doing. Like a lot of these map bans, we've noticed that a lot of the teams are pretty predictable. So
hmm
we're just kind of, we knew that we'd probably play. It was I think either Cafe or Club today, and then we ended up going Cafe. So
hmm Well, congratulations on that 3rd win, and I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
hopefully,
Have a good one, Swaylin.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if all this talk about consistency is true, there's no reason not to think that they're going to be right back there. And at this point, points wise, that puts them into first tentatively. We still have today and tomorrow to play, but at this point, unless Rent Free also continues to wow, One Shot may be the front runners at this point. Anyways, that's 2 games down. We've got 3 left to go in the day. Coming up, we will get to see Aqualix taking on Unemployment.